Rod Kane here. Want to talk to you some more about my favorite ancient medieval miniatures game, Triumph. And today, what I want to talk about is a battle scenario that I'm working on, kind of the process for working on the scenario, what's coming up with scenario books for Triumph. The battle I want to talk about today is Ipsis. So, Ipsis is one I wanted to do for a long time because it's in Triumph, it's one of the battles where I can get the most elephants on the table possible, because both sides had elephants and they had quite a few of them. So I think it's kind of an interesting battle, and I'm going to show you today kind of how I go about putting together these scenarios for Triumph, the thought process behind, and then talk a little bit about this battle itself. So first of all, in coming up with any battle scenario, of course, you've got to start out with some research. Obviously, Ipsis is a war. It's from the Wars of the Diadochi, so it's after Alexander the Great. So there's some build-up studying to go. Who were the Diadochi? Who were the successors? So you want to start with some historical research. Osprey resources and Osprey Publishing are great resources. Of course, today the internet is filled with fantastic resources. The Kings and Generals channel is a fantastic resource. So you start by doing a little bit of research on the battle, and then you start to apply those to the forces that are going to be involved. I always start with my battles with the Meshwesh army setup. So, for example, in this particular battle, we're dealing with the armies of Antigonus and the armies of Seleucus. So you have the early Seleucid list to work from, and then you have the Antigonid list from Meshwesh. And then from there, using other resources, I start to build the battle scenario. Typically, for most Triumph battles, I try to go with 3 commands. It works really well with most ancient battles, but some battles are so large that they really do require a 4th command in order to get enough of what I consider to be a reasonable representation of the troops on the battlefield. And in this particular case, I wanted to put the maximum number of elephants allowed down, but at the same time, I also wanted it to feel proportionate to the other troops that were involved. And there is a very large mounted contingent to consider, as well as a very large pike or infantry block in the center. So in this particular battle, I did 4 commands. Once I start to lay the commands out on the table, and I usually lay the miniatures out on the table and I play with the miniatures on the table as live kind of building blocks for the set. And then once I get something that I'm happy with, I try to draw the battle up in a map format with the different forces arrayed, the different commands broken down. And then we usually move on to the play testing. This map, I also include battle cards. So for this particular scenario, Ipsis has got heavy Greek hoplites in the late period. So they're going to get hold the line battle, or deep hoplite formation battle cards. And then the other one that comes into play at Ipsis is the scythe chariots. So scythe chariots were deployed by the Seleucus side. At least that's what we have reports of. There's not much description of them in the actual impact of the battle. Scythe chariots in Triumph, you'll find, are one of those things where in the right circumstances they can do something for you, but they are not, they're just like in the ancient battles, they're not going to necessarily be a game-changing effect. So with that, what I want to do now is talk a little bit about the battle that I've got set up here, how the forces are deployed, the command structures, and give you a little bit of an insight into the Battle of Ipsus itself. With commands in Triumph, I usually start with a 48-point command per player. That's the plan anyway. So 6 or 8 players, I plan on 48 points per command. However, in some battles like this one, the center commands are heavy on points, so they tend to be 50. They're going to be 54 points each. And the flank commands, which are the mounted, are going to be a little more brittle at 42 points. At least that's the way I've got them laid out for this particular battle. So plus or minus a few points per command, it does change the dynamics of how things break. The I don't like to give players less than 42 points to command because I find that that's too few and the command is way too brittle. But 42 is reasonable, especially if you're looking for a recreating a historical battle where, and it was very typical of these classical period battles, the cavalry flanks would engage and there was often a break on one flank or the other, which would then lean towards deciding the battle. Even if the centers had gotten engaged, it was typically those breaking on the flanks that would cause it. So I like to generate command points based on, you know, where was the main force of the battle, where was the main decision point of the battle being occurring, and it was frequently on the cavalry flank. So having them a little bit brittle plays into that really well, especially with the Triumph Grand Triumph morale system. So with that, I'm going to take the camera and I'm going to move it along the battlefield and show you what troops I've got laid out here and why. Try to give you an overview of the battlefield. My plan is to have a series of these battles for Historicon coming up in 2026. We're going to play out the battles of Alexander the Great. So we're going to go from Granicus to Issus to Gaugamela, which is also a 4-command battle. And then maybe for fun on Saturday, I might bring Ipsis itself with the elephants for the afternoon battle at Historicon this July. Okay, so taking a look down the battlefield, and this is being seen from the right flank of the Seleucid command. The Seleucid command with Seleucus himself, Seleucus I, is right flank, 2 knights, a lot of jav cav, some horsebow, a little bit of light foot supporting. The pike block in the center, now I have the command separated visually so that you can see the split. So we've got, for the right center command, we have a pike block, and that commander will also take charge of the forward elephant screen with light infantry support. And unusually at this battle, Seleucus chose to take the mass of his elephants and make them the reserve. Seems a little bit strange. We're going to see how it plays out, but he had a massive elephant reserve. So the majority of the Seleucid elephants are to the rear of the pike block, and they did come into play in the battle in blocking the cavalry from the enemy when they broke through on the left flank. Left flank, commanded by his son, and this is a knight general with a lot of jav cav, some horsebow, a couple of light foot of support. As we move over to the Antigonid side, you will see that we have on the right flank, this will be Demetrius and also a young general assisting him, Pyrrhus, who will later become famous for invading Rome, or the Roman Empire. And a much, much larger infantry force supplemented by a larger contingent of Greek mercenaries with a smaller but similar screen of elephants in the front. They were outnumbered on elephants. They didn't have the massive reserve. They deployed their elephants to the front to counter the elephants that Seleucus had deployed to the front. And on the left flank, a force of cavalry, slightly smaller force of cavalry, but 2 knights, bunch of jav cav, rabble, and light foot. So these are the forces that you'll see deployed for this battle. And there's something about that elephant reserve that just looks incredibly terrifying. The problem is, because they are deployed as reserve, and these are similar sized armies, the infantry block for the Antigonid army is much stronger. However, their cavalry forces are slightly weaker. So there's a slight cavalry advantage and a serious elephant advantage on the Seleucid side. So it'll be very interesting to see how this battle plays out. I am going to use 4 command dice. So every command will have their own command die, and it's designed to be an 8-player game. And we're going to try this out at upcoming local convention, and we'll let you know online on the Facebook page, or maybe later on the YouTube page, how this battle plays out. And if you get a chance, come check it out at Historicon 2026 in July.